Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to get into something really interesting.
Oh yeah.
Taiwan's semiconductor industry and how the upcoming election in the US could impact it.
Okay.
We've got a lot of sources on this one.
Sounds like it.
Al Jazeera, Forbes, CNBC, NPR, even the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
And they all paint this picture of Taiwan stuck in this geopolitical tug-of-war between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, Taiwan's role in all of this is fascinating, right?
It really is.
I mean, this tiny island
Right.
is like a tech superpower.
You know, our sources say they produce something like
Yeah.
almost 60% of the world's semiconductors
A lot,
and 90% of the most advanced ones.
really.
Yeah. Those are the chips that are in pretty much everything, from our phones to our cars, even military tech.
I see.
So that makes Taiwan incredibly important to both the U.S. and China.
It's true, and that's where things get a bit tricky. The U.S. relies on Taiwan for those chips, and they want to protect them from China.
Okay.
But they're also trying to limit China's tech industry.
So they don't get too powerful.
Exactly.
So it sounds like Taiwan is kind of stuck in the middle then,
Oh, absolutely.
caught between these two superpowers.
Yeah, a huge chunk of Taiwan's chip sales actually go to China.
Really?
So these U.S. restrictions create a lot of pressure for them.
I can imagine.
The sources even describe Taiwanese engineers feeling like they're on a roller coaster,
Oh, wow.
constantly trying to adjust their business plans to the latest regulations coming out.
Makes sense. So let's get into the Teach IPS Act. This was back in 2022, right?
Yeah, 2022.
This law that's aimed at boosting chip production in the U.S. And making things tougher for China, would you say?
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
And it's offering billions of dollars in subsidies
It is.
to incentivize companies to build chip factories here in the U.S.
It's a big deal, and we're seeing big players like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Yeah, TSMC.
The biggest chip maker in the world.
They are shifting their focus to the U.S.
So what does that look like for them?
Well, they're building 3 massive facilities in Arizona,
Wow.
investing a crazy $65 billion of their own money
65 billion.
on top of the government incentives.
Whoa. That's a big commitment.
It is. They must be pretty serious about this move.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for the rest of the industry?
Well, it's definitely putting pressure on those smaller Taiwanese chip companies. They're facing more competition now,
Okay.
especially from Chinese companies that are ramping up production.
Of what kinds of chips?
The older, less advanced chips,
Interesting.
the kind that still go in a lot of electronics,
Right. Right. So it's not just about the most cutting edge stuff.
No, not at all.
It's affecting the whole market.
Yeah. And the ripple effects, they don't stop there.
What do you mean?
One article even mentioned ASML,
I've heard of them.
this Dutch company
Right.
that makes the most advanced chip-making machines. Well, they've had to lower their earnings estimates
Oh, wow.
because Chinese chip makers are now blocked from buying their top-tier equipment.
So the restrictions from the U.S. aren't just impacting Taiwan then.
Right.
They're really changing the whole global landscape.
It's a chain reaction,
Yeah, it's a chain reaction. And that leads us up to the big question.
Okay.
The 2024 U.S. election.
Right.
How could a potential Trump or Harris presidency affect Taiwan's chip industry?
Big question.
Huge. And our sources suggest that both candidates want to be tough on China,
Yeah, it seems like it.
but they might go about it in very different ways.
Interesting.
So let's start with Trump.
Okay.
He's made some pretty strong statements in the past, even accused Taiwan of stealing the U.S. chip industry.
Really?
Yeah, and during his presidency, he put tariffs on a lot of Chinese goods. And those tariffs really hurt Taiwanese suppliers,
Oh, I bet.
the ones who do business with China.
Right.
And he's even talked about putting a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods.
Wow, that would be a huge blow to Taiwan's economy.
No kidding. So it sounds like Trump's approach is,
Yeah.
well, pretty unpredictable.
I think that's fair to say. The sources we've seen point out that
Yeah.
his foreign policy often revolved around these personal relationships,
Okay.
like the one he had with Xi Jinping.
Right.
But those kinds of relationships can be volatile,
For sure.
which makes things really uncertain for Taiwan.
But weren't there also some ways that Trump's policies actually benefited Taiwanese companies?
That's true, even if it wasn't intentional.
Okay.
Some of his policies, like those tariffs, encourage Taiwanese companies to diversify, to become less reliant on China.
Interesting. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
It is, for sure.
Okay, so Trump's a bit of a wild card.
You could say that.
What about Harris then?
Okay.
What can Taiwan expect from her?
Well, She's been a lot more cautious in her comments about Taiwan and China. It's likely that she'd stick with the Biden administration's current strategy, bringing chip production back to the U.S.
Okay.
and keeping those tech restrictions on China.
Got it. But some of our sources did express concern about Harris's close ties to Silicon Valley.
He did.
So could that lead to policies that favor U.S. companies
Yeah.
over Taiwanese ones?
It's definitely something to watch.
Even if they're competing for the same market,
Exactly.
no matter who wins the election, it seems like Taiwan's chip industry is going to have to be smart and adaptable
It will.
to navigate all this, these changing political and economic waters.
For sure.
So we've covered a lot already.
Yep.
Taiwan's dominance in the chip industry, U.S.-China tensions, the impact of the CHIPS Act, and how the upcoming election could really shake things up.
It could.
But
Yeah.
you might be wondering,
Yeah.
why should I care about all of this?
Right.
How does any of this affect me?
It's a good question. And here's where it gets personal.
Okay.
The semiconductor supply chain.
Uh-huh.
It's global.
It is?
What happens with U.S. policy? These trade wars, it affects all of us,
In what way?
even if we don't realize it. Think about all the electronics you use.
Oh, yeah.
Your phone, your computer, your car. They all rely on semiconductors.
They do. So if those tariffs keep going up,
Yeah,
we could end up paying more for our gadgets.
that's a possibility. On the other hand,
Yeah.
if the U.S. ramps up its own chip production
Okay.
and those supply chains get stronger, more resilient,
Yeah.
maybe things will get cheaper. It all depends what happens next.
Right. Right. And there's another piece of this puzzle that we can't ignore.
What's that?
The environmental impact
Yeah.
of all this chip manufacturing.
It's a big one. One article from the World Economic Forum really highlighted some of those challenges,
Like what?
like the use of hazardous chemicals
Oh, right.
and just the sheer amount of energy and water needed to make these chips.
Makes you think.
It does.
And if we look specifically at what's happening in the U.S.,
Okay.
there's concern about the Building Chips in America Act.
Yeah. That it could actually allow some chip manufacturing projects to bypass certain environmental reviews.
Oh, wow.
And that's worrying.
It is. It raises all sorts of concerns.
Like what?
Potential pollution, habitat destruction, even climate change.
We can't ignore that,
No, we need to be mindful.
of those trade-offs.
Yes, the ones involved in trying to boost chip production.
So this is a complex situation,
Very much so.
but a fascinating one.
Oh, absolutely.
We've laid some groundwork here,
Yeah,
but there's still so much more to explore.
there is.
So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive
Okay.
into Taiwan's chip industry and the forces shaping its future.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the CHIPS Act
Yeah,
and its impact on Taiwan's chip industry. It's making some big waves.
it is.
But I'm curious about the long game here.
Okay.
What are the potential long-term consequences of this move to bring chip manufacturing to the U.S.?
That's a great question. You know the CHIPS Act?
It's not just about handing out money.
Right.
It's a strategic play
Okay.
to reshape the entire landscape.
The semiconductor landscape?
Exactly. The U.S. wants to build a supply chain that's less reliant on Taiwan
Okay.
and more anchored here in the U.S.
Interesting.
to lessen the risk of disruptions.
So less vulnerable.
Yeah, whether it's from political tensions
Right.
or even natural disasters.
I see, that makes sense. But can the U.S. really compete with Taiwan when it comes to chip manufacturing?
Well, that's the big question.
I mean, Taiwan has a lot of expertise.
They do.
They're known for being incredibly efficient.
That's true. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Our sources point out that building these chip fabrication plants,
The fabs.
yeah, the
What
fabs,
they're called.
it's a very complex and costly undertaking.
Wow.
It takes a ton of skilled workers and a whole network of suppliers.
Oh.
And even if the U.S. can get those fabs up and running,
Right.
can they really do it as cheaply and efficiently as Taiwan?
Sounds like a gamble.
It is a gamble with high stakes.
Yeah.
The sources really emphasize how vital semiconductors are, not just for the digital economy,
Right.
but for national security too.
For sure. And that brings us back to that bigger picture.
Okay.
The rivalry between the U.S. and China. It's intensifying.
Definitely.
And technology is right at the heart of it.
It is. Both countries want to be the leader
Yeah.
in areas like AI, quantum computing,
Right.
and of course, semiconductor.
Semiconductors.
They see control of these technologies as key
Okay.
to their economic and military power.
Makes sense. And it feels like Taiwan is stuck
Yeah.
right in the middle of this power struggle.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. is putting pressure on Taiwan
Okay.
to join them in restricting China's access to technology.
Okay.
But that creates tension
Right?
because China is Taiwan's biggest trading partner.
It's a tough spot for Taiwan.
It is. They rely on the U.S. for security.
Yeah.
But they need to maintain a good relationship with China.
Right. So given this complicated situation, what can Taiwan do to protect their interests?
Well, one article suggested that Taiwan should focus on its strengths.
Okay.
Areas where they have a clear advantage.
So like continuing to innovate,
Exactly. Developing even more advanced chip technologies.
staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah, staying one step ahead.
Smart.
And they could also build stronger partnerships, other key players
Okay.
in the semiconductor supply chain,
Like who?
like Japan,
Okay.
South Korea, even European countries.
Diversifying.
Exactly. This diversification could really help them navigate this uncertainty.
Makes sense, especially considering how unpredictable things are.
It is.
Is there any chance, though, that Taiwan could play a role in easing tensions between the U.S. and China?
Interesting.
Maybe act as a kind of mediator
Okay.
in the tech sector.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It would require some serious diplomacy.
Right.
And both the U.S. and China would have to be on board.
To work with Taiwan.
Yeah. But given Taiwan's unique position, it's a possibility worth considering.
Definitely. But one thing is for sure.
What's that?
The stakes are incredibly high.
They are.
For Taiwan.
Yeah.
And frankly, for the whole world.
Absolutely. You've painted a really vivid picture here
Thanks.
of just how complex this situation is.
We've talked about the long-term consequences of the TTS Act, the escalating U.S.-China rivalry,
Right.
and some potential strategies for Taiwan.
Yeah.
But there's another critical aspect we can't overlook,
Okay.
the environmental impact of this race to produce more and more chips.
It's a big one. One article from the World Economic Forum really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It highlighted the environmental challenges that come with semiconductor manufacturing.
Like what?
You know, things like the use of dangerous chemicals,
Right.
the massive amounts of energy and water
Yeah.
required to make these chips.
A lot.
It is.
And then we have the Building Chips in America Act,
Right.
which could potentially allow some chip manufacturing projects to bypass certain environmental reviews.
Yeah, that's a concern.
Definitely doesn't sound good.
No, it raises concerns about pollution, habitat destruction, even climate change.
We can't just ignore those potential consequences
We can't, no.
in this rush to boost chip production.
Right, we need to be thinking about sustainable solutions.
So what are some ways to address this?
Well, one of the articles mentioned investing in cleaner technologies
Okay.
and making the manufacturing process more sustainable.
Yeah.
Seems like a crucial step.
For sure. And maybe stricter environmental regulations could help too.
They could.
Making sure chip manufacturing is done responsibly,
Absolutely.
no matter where those fabs are located.
It's a challenge, but it's one we need to face head on.
Yeah.
We can't afford to sacrifice our environment
Right.
for technological advancement.
It seems like we've arrived at a crucial crossroads here.
Yeah.
We've unpacked the complex world of Taiwan's chip industry, explored the geopolitical tensions, and considered the environmental impact.
Right.
But what does this all mean for you, our listener?
Good question.
That's what we'll be diving into next. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. We've explored Taiwan's crucial role in the chip industry, the potential impact of the U.S. election, and all those geopolitical and environmental factors. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to distill some key takeaways for you, our listener.
What really struck me is just how interconnected our world is. Things that seem so far away, like an election in the U.S.
Right.
or a trade war with China, they can have ripple effects that reach all of us.
They do.
Remember how we talked about those tariffs?
Yeah.
Potentially making our smartphones more expensive?
Right. It's a powerful reminder that what happens on the global stage matters to each of us.
Absolutely. And we also saw how technology, especially semiconductors, have become this battleground for global competition.
Yeah.
The U.S. and China are locked in this struggle for dominance.
That's a tough one.
And it creates both opportunities and challenges for Taiwan.
For sure. And let's not forget the environmental piece of this puzzle.
Right.
As we push for more and more chips, we need to be thinking critically about sustainability,
Absolutely.
and responsible manufacturing.
We can't ignore those potential consequences
We can't.
for our planet. So where do we go from here?
Good question.
What can you, as an informed listener,
Yeah.
take away from this deep dive?
I think it's a call to action.
Okay.
We need to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Stay informed about these complex issues.
Right.
The decisions made by governments, by corporations in this sector, they have a huge impact on our lives.
They do.
It's up to us to hold them accountable.
I completely agree.
We need to be critical consumers of information,
Yeah.
questioning assumptions, considering different perspectives.
Right.
And don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
Advocate for policies that promote both technological advancement and environmental sustainability. We can't afford to choose one over the other.
This deep dive has really shown that the future of technology is being shaped right now.
It is.
And it's a future we all have a stake in.
So keep learning. Keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
Keep pushing for a better, more sustainable future.
That's what these deep dives are all about.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure exploring these complex issues with you.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
And remember,
Knowledge is power.